Have you ever felt like you had to tone it down just so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable? Let me tell you how my senior year of high school, I won prom queen. But what was supposed to be a celebratory moment turned actually awkward because of a friend's reaction. But you know what? It taught me the importance of never shrinking my own joy. This is about holding your head high, owning your wins, and wearing your crown proudly, no matter who's watching. Let me take you back to the 90s, because silence never told the full story. Hey, I'm Nina Chantele, and this is Unmuted. So let me tell you something kind of funny, but also it's kind of sad, but it's from way back in high school. And don't get crazy. I didn't say way back. I'm just saying it's way back in high school. I was actually prom queen my senior year. And I know it might sound kind of cheesy, like a movie plot, but trust me, it didn't feel like a fairy tale after I started thinking about it recently, and which is why I'm bringing the story to you. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud of that moment. I mean, being prom queen, the whole school voted. So it was cool. At my high school, you didn't get nominated as a couple. People see a picture of you and the prom king and they think, oh, that was your boyfriend at the time or you dated. That's not how my high school nominated. It wasn't about who you were dating or who was the cutest pair. They voted from freshman year through senior year students. And so they voted for, they nominated, I think it was like 6 girls and 6 guys. And then obviously you voted and one prom king, one prom queen separately. And so honestly, the way that all went down was I was friends with everybody. Okay. What you see is what you get. I was like this even in grade school and high school. If you've ever seen Mean Girls, which is one of my absolute favorite movies that I can quote in life, the scene at the beginning where Lindsay Lohan is being introduced, or I should say Katie Heron, was being introduced to the cafeteria scene. They were showing her in the cafeteria scene. They were pointing out all of the different tables, like what cliques are where and what groups are where. Well, that's exactly how my high school was. It was these little cliques, right? But I always floated between all of them. I was really cool with everybody. I'd sit with the jocks. I would sit with the preppy kids, with the skaters, the rock alternative, the quiet ones, the kids that people even used to call nerds. I was cool with everybody. And I would defend people too. Like if I saw you picking on somebody that maybe you didn't know what was going on with them at home, they were quiet or, kids were mean. Remember, you would have some students in class that looked like they didn't bathe in like 3 days. Well, now that you're an adult, don't you feel kind of bad thinking back to maybe they had something going on at home? Maybe there was a reason why those kids weren't able to bathe in 3 days or didn't have fresh smelling clothes. As an adult, you start to think back that some people had it hard at home. And I feel like back then, my personality was even that way. So I would defend people. If I would hear anybody making fun of somebody with a learning disability, no. I would come for them. I didn't like seeing anybody get picked on. And so when prom came around and they called my name for prom queen, it was like all that love came back full circle. I was so excited. It was on a boat at Navy Pier in Chicago. I remember the boat was called the Spirit of Chicago. And they had these stairs that would come from the top down. So when they would call each person that was nominated for prom king and queen, you would walk down with that person down the stairs. And I had designed my own prom dress. I remember my mom had a friend that was lived on the east side of Chicago. Her name was La Señora Castañeda. And she used to make everybody's dresses and quinceañera dresses. If you know about quinceañeras, then it's like when a Hispanic girl turns 15. It's like a sweet 16, right? Like a coming out party. And she had made mine. I had designed it. Well, what I would do when I say designed it, I would take little clips from certain magazines that I would see. I would get the fabric from a fabric store. So I even had the gloves that went on up to the middle of my arm past my elbow. And my dress had a chiffon train. And I remember they called my name. And Gabe, who was walking with me, who's one of the prom king nominees, grasped my hand so hard. If he wouldn't have, I would have fallen down the stairs. Could you have imagined calling my name and I'm falling down the stairs because of my chiffon dress? That was just a moment that I remember on the Spirit of Chicago. For our prom theme was Sea of Love. You see what they did there? Anyway, so it was time to announce the winners, and they said my name, right, for prom queen. And it was so sweet. It was so exciting. And then it turned awkward because one of my closest friends was also nominated. And we had planned this whole night together. We had our group of friends. We all rode in the same limo with our date. We were all going to take pictures together. We were going to eat after. And then the next day, I don't know if you guys had this, but we had something called Senior Ditch Day. And it was at Six Flags Great America the next morning. So the second I won, I was happy, taking the pictures. I ended up in the yearbook. But when it was time the whole group was hugging me, she had this look on her face and the energy just changed. She sat at the far end of the table at dinner. By the way, I remember we were in the limo, going on the way to dinner after prom. And I had one of those old cell phones that looked like a block on the end of the cell phone. That was my dad's phone. It was like the battery was the block on the back of it. My dad was like, just call for emergency purposes. Don't use the phone because they used to charge by the minute. And so I remember sitting in that limo after prom, calling my mom on this giant block cell phone. And I was like, Mom, I won. I was so excited. But then I was also kind of whispering, Mom, I won. Because my friend was in the car and she was all upset. She was acting all funny. She had this face on her and I felt bad. My mom was screaming with joy on the other end and I was trying to hide it. And that's when I first learned how easy it is to dim yourself. I mean, the fact that I had to whisper my excitement to my mom on that moment that I could never get back. The fact that at dinner, it was supposed to be just a fun group situation and she barely said a word to me. In fact, the next day, Senior Ditch Day, she didn't even show up. And, how quick you can start shrinking your joy just to keep somebody else comfortable. You've had those moments, right? Think about those moments. Years later, I had someone close to me tell me something I'll never forget. I was already in radio by then. And it was him that, got me started in radio, saw something in me, told me, you talk to everybody, you got this voice, you might as well be in radio. So, I was already building a name and I started to see the ratings. And he told me one time, he's like, oh, I saw the ratings. And I kind of what he says, I was kind of quiet about it. I was kind of like low spoken about it. Now remembering about how I was telling my mom in that phone call, kind of whispering my excitement. And he told me, I'll never forget this. Don't ever apologize for your success. Wear your crown proudly. And that hit me because it wasn't just about radio. It was about everything. Doesn't that apply to everything right now that we're talking about it? I mean, how many times had I played small so someone else didn't feel bad? How many times in my life did I keep quiet about something good just because I didn't want to make it awkward? I can think of several times in my life. It's like when you're at a wedding and they do that whole, if anyone has a reason these two shouldn't be married, speak now or forever hold your peace. Could you imagine if somebody actually stood up? They'd ruin the entire day, right? The entire wedding, the entire ceremony. That's the power of energy. One person can completely change the vibe and a memorable moment forever. It made me think about how many of us do that in our own lives. How many times we bring people around to celebrate something big and then can't even celebrate because of how they're acting. I've got so many scenarios I can share with you. I really can. But some of those people might be listening to my podcast and they would not, already they feel some type of way about their stuff So already they're holding on to something. Believe me, if I told that story right now, it would just make things worse. But, it's how they act. That's not just awkward. That's energy. And it matters. It matters because it goes on. It lingers. Your memories, your moments, they ruin them. It's like the same thing about who you live with. Who you even travel with, who you let into your space at any time. If every day feels heavy and you're always tiptoeing, walking on broken glass, on eggshells, that energy drags you down and you deserve better. And here's the beautiful part. Fast forward all these years later. That same friend found me on social media one day years ago and friended me, sent me sweet messages, told me about her life. I started following her life. She's married, has a whole bunch of kids. She has a beautiful family, looks so happy. In fact, she has aged wonderfully, like fine wine. I even saw photos from her daughter's quinceañera. I was just telling you about how it's like a coming out party, like a sweet 16. And it took me right back to us being teens. And then about a year ago, I went to go visit my family in Chicago and I ran into her at a store in like something random, like in Northwest Indiana. I was with my mom and my mom and I always have a good time when we go shopping and we just start trying on clothes. And I was in the dressing room and I remember coming out. My mom tends to kind of like dip off and start wandering into different aisles when I asked her to just please stay there for a moment so that I could come out and she could see and she could tell me yay or nay on whatever item I've tried on. But of course I come out, my mom's gone. I'm like, oh, here we go. So I'm like, mom, you know how you are looking for somebody calling their name in a store? And that is when here comes my friend out of nowhere. And she's like, I knew that was your voice. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was like none of that awkwardness ever existed in our life. We hugged so tight. We were so excited to see each other. And even talked about getting the old crew back together and how long was I in town? Let's try to make it happen. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because I had to fly back to LA sooner than planned, but I would have hung out with her in a heartbeat. I would have. And that's the point. We both ended up happy. She's living her life, married, children, that wonderful life of hers. I'm living mine all the way over here on the West Coast, this career woman doing all other things. This is the way our lives ended up being, and we are happy in our own world. There was no reason for either of us to feel small back then. In any moment that you're living in and you feel like it's so big, you'll see later, it's going to feel small. Like, really, what was I even, why? Like, why was that a memory for me? But that's the thing, energy, it makes a memory. And there's no reason to dim anything for somebody else. So here's what I want to leave you with. Number one is wear your crown proudly. And secondly, don't shrink to make someone else feel okay about where they are. And your joy doesn't take away from theirs, by the way. And another thing, if they're the right people, they'll clap for you. And if they can't, that's not about you. And that's where they are in their journey. Write this down. Energy is everything. Secondly, celebrate your wins. And number three, stand tall in your moments. And these are not in a chronological order of any which way, but the last thing I want you to write down and remember is never feel guilty for the way God or the universe decided to crown you. I had to take you back to the 90s and give you exactly a memory that was on my mind this week, because silence never told the full story. This is Unmuted with Nina Chantele.